Have you ever made a mistake so heavy that it clung to you like a shadow, no matter how far you ran? Maybe it wasn't even your fault entirely, but the shame still stuck, and the whispers still followed. Bathsheba's name has echoed through history, often tied to scandal, temptation, and silence. But that's not where her story ends. There's a deeper truth buried beneath the gossip and assumptions. A woman who lost her innocence, her husband, her child, and yet still found God's hand reaching for her through the ruins. This isn't a tale of perfect beginnings, it's a journey through ashes toward mercy, a quiet walk from shame to grace. And maybe, just maybe, it sounds a little like your story too. Hey, welcome to Biblical Stories, where the ancient whispers of Scripture come alive in the raw, the broken, and the beautiful. We tell the stories behind the names, the hearts behind the verses. If you've ever felt unseen, unworthy, or uncertain whether God could still use you after what you've done, or what's been done to you, this place is for you. Today, we walk with Bathsheba, not as a cautionary tale, but as a woman with deep pain and surprising redemption. Let's begin, not with the crown, but with the tears behind it. She was bathing. That's where we usually begin. A rooftop bath, a curious king, and a decision that changed her life. But Bathsheba's story didn't begin there. She was the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah, a woman living her life within the structures of her culture and faith. The rooftop wasn't an act of seduction. It was part of ceremonial cleansing, likely after her period, following the law of Moses. In other words, she wasn't tempting, she was being faithful. But someone was watching. Someone powerful. And power often rewrites stories to suit its own desires. David wanted her. The king summoned, and she came. Could she have refused? Maybe. But maybe not. When a king calls, silence can be safer than protest. That night cost her more than she could imagine. She returned home, not in love, not victorious, just carrying something unexpected, life. A child. But not joy. And not peace. What followed was a chain of horrors. Her husband was murdered, quietly, cleverly, so David's secret could stay buried. But secrets don't stay buried for long, and sin always finds a way to speak. Can you picture Bathsheba sitting alone, holding the weight of her stomach, her grief wrapped around her like a shawl? One minute she's a wife, the next a widow, then a queen, but none of it by choice. Sometimes life throws crowns at you when all you wanted was peace. And then, her child dies. Her firstborn. Gone. Not because she failed as a mother, but because sin leaves scars, even on the innocent. What kind of God allows that? What kind of grace waits behind that door? And yet, God did not abandon her. That is the part we often skip. We stop at scandal. We freeze her in the scene of the sin. But God didn't. He saw her pain. He named her grief. And he gave her a second son. Solomon. Not just a replacement child, but a child with a promise. God called him beloved. And that love wasn't just for Solomon, it was for Bathsheba too. She wasn't cursed. She was covered. She wasn't thrown away. She was brought into the story of redemption, piece by piece. There's something powerful about how Scripture reintroduces her. Later, when Solomon rises to power, it is Bathsheba who walks into the room as the queen mother. The woman once used and discarded becomes a woman of voice, of honor, of legacy. She advises, she influences, she speaks. This is not the same silent woman from the rooftop. This is a woman who has seen loss, tasted shame, and still stood up. Grace doesn't erase the past, it transforms it into testimony. Bathsheba's name is forever written in the genealogy of Jesus. Yes, that Bathsheba. The one people still whisper about. The one who was violated, silenced, and redefined by others. God didn't erase her from the line, he wrote her in. Not as a footnote. As a part of the promise. If that doesn't scream redemption, I don't know what does. Because when people try to write you out, God writes you in with bold ink. When people label you, God renames you. Have you ever carried a name that wasn't yours? Maybe it was failure, or divorced, or impure. Bathsheba carried the weight of an entire kingdom's judgment. But God never called her by her shame. He saw the woman beneath the scandal. And he still sees you. Bathsheba is proof that healing isn't about reversing what happened. It's about who you become after the fall. It's about God meeting you in the ruins and saying, you still have purpose. You still belong. So what does grace really look like? It looks like a woman holding both sorrow and strength in the same heart. It looks like Bathsheba, raising a king, walking into royal chambers with dignity, no longer defined by a single night but by a lifetime of resilience. It looks like God using broken beginnings to write beautiful endings. And it looks like you, yes, you, when you decide your story isn't over just because the world says it should be. Maybe today is the beginning of your healing after the fall. Bathsheba could have chosen silence forever. She could have hidden in the shadows of the palace, let the crown cover her pain, let time erase her voice. But she didn't. Later in her life, she would go to David, not as the trembling girl from years before, but as a mother, as an advocate. She reminded him of a promise, that Solomon would reign. And David listened. She had become a woman with influence. A voice in the succession of kings. Her pain didn't disqualify her. It gave her wisdom. 12. Sometimes we think our worst chapters mean we've forfeited the rest of the book. But Bathsheba teaches us something different. She teaches us that even a shattered reputation can be rebuilt. That even if your beginning was messy, God can still give you an ending full of peace. That you are not defined by how others entered your story, but by how God remains in it. Her life isn't about a scandal, it's about the grace that followed her through it. 13. And what about her relationship with David? That's another part we rarely explore. After everything, they became partners, not just in politics, but in parenting. Together, they raised Solomon, not just as a boy, but as a king. That takes trust. That takes time. Forgiveness doesn't always happen in a moment. It's built over years of intentional healing. Bathsheba wasn't just David's past, she was part of his legacy. And she didn't let bitterness steal that role. In 1 Kings 2, when Bathsheba enters Solomon's royal court, he stands to honor her. The sun rises for his mother. He bows before her and sets a throne beside his own. Can you imagine what that felt like? To be once summoned in secret, now welcomed in honor. From a silent participant in someone else's mistake, to a woman who raises a wise king. It was her hands that guided him. Her prayers that shaped him. Her wounds that made her wise. This is the beauty of God's redemption. It doesn't just heal the wound, it rewrites the story. Bathsheba went from brokenness to royalty, from silence to influence, from loss to legacy. That's not just a spiritual metaphor, that's the power of grace in motion. We often look for miracles that remove our pain. But sometimes, the real miracle is becoming someone new in the middle of it. Not rescued from the fire, but refined in it. Bathsheba's story reminds us that God doesn't just use the willing, He uses the wounded. He doesn't just bless the bold, He blesses the broken. And maybe that's you. Maybe you've walked through something no one else knows. Maybe you've carried shame that didn't even start with your own sin. And you wonder, can God still use me? The answer is in Bathsheba's life. If He used her, not just as a survivor, but as a vessel for royalty, He can still use you. You don't have to wait until everything is perfect to step into purpose. Bathsheba didn't. She walked forward with grief in her past and glory in her future. She wasn't flawless, but she was faithful. Faithful to raise her son. Faithful to stand up for what was right. Faithful to believe that her name could mean more than her worst moment. If that's not hope, I don't know what is. You can walk in that same kind of strength. Maybe today, you need to let go of how others see you, and lean into how God sees you. He doesn't see you as used, or shamed, or forgotten. He sees you as chosen, as seen, as restored. Just like Bathsheba. You're not just the woman from that moment. You are the woman who kept going. The one who carried life after loss. The one who found her voice again. That's what healing after the fall looks like. It's not clean, but it's holy. So take a breath. Look in the mirror. You are not beyond redemption. Bathsheba's life proves that grace doesn't avoid messy places, it steps into them. God's grace doesn't tiptoe around shame, it erases it. Not by pretending the pain never happened, but by lifting you from it, like a crown placed gently on a weary head. Your story still matters. Your presence still carries power. And your name, yes, even now, is still being written in God's story. If Bathsheba could speak to you today, I think she would say, "You are not ruined. You are being rebuilt." And I want to echo that to you now. You are more than what happened. You are not disqualified. There is a throne of peace waiting for your soul, a place to rest, to reign, to begin again. Let her story remind you, even after the fall, there is still grace. There is still purpose. And yes, there is still redemption. If this touched you, consider subscribing to Biblical Stories, where every broken heart finds a voice and every fallen soul finds a path home.